Both Hazare and Ramdev ended their agitations because of what I wrote in a press release dated July 29, 2012, titled, quote, "Beat Hazare and Ramdev to death," unquote, about their being tools of CIA RAW and how the simultaneous nuclear destruction of New Delhi, Washington, and New York, as I have described it will occur in my earlier videos, will take care of the important problems. The fact that the Indian media have not reported that Hazare and Ramdev ended their agitations because of what I wrote is an illustration of the problem, which is CIA rule over India through RAW, as a part of which India's media are also tools of CIA RAW. I have shown this in my main blog, Nuclear Supremacy for India over US, that both the Hazare and Ramdev agitations were sponsored by CIA RAW to keep India Gandhian and thus poor, weak, and enslaved. That the homosexual M.K. Gandhi himself was a lifelong British agent who waged a fake, quote, independence, unquote, struggle managed by the Intelligence Bureau. It was managed by the Intelligence Bureau, and to take attention away from the continuing white colonial rule over India, which will be ended by the simultaneous nuclear destruction of New Delhi, Washington, and New York, and as I have described in my earlier videos. What the insect journalists and columnists, politicians, etc. say does not matter. Only what Satish Chandra says matters. The criminal, inferior Indian niggers of RAW routinely post abuse on my comments or delete them. See my article, What You Should Know About RAW. That's What You Should Know About RAW, that's one word, .blogspot.com. RAW functions as a branch of the CIA. It will be destroyed by the simultaneous nuclear destructions of New Delhi, Washington, and New York. A post by KLP Dubey on Bharat Rakshak on the 26th of August, quote, "The universe itself is nothing but a linguistic entity comprised of the Vedic words. Matter, energy, etc. have no separate existence outside of these words. The Vedic word itself breathes forth everything that there is," unquote. Note that Vedic words are not just anyone's word. In my press release dated April 26, 2011, titled CIA Rule Over India, I said, "The biggest scandal in India is CIA rule over India through RAW and CIA RAW's control of India's prime ministers, politicians, and media. The Indian press has been full of headlines like, 'Indian American wins Pulitzer Prize for book on cancer,' unquote. What is so great about a history of cancer?" was my response. "Has he found a cure for cancer? I have. The entire physiology of an organism can be conceived of as a network of interlinked biological clocks. The disease process in cancer involves changes in biological clocks. In my laboratory research with rats, I discovered a way to drastically modify biological clocks at a very fundamental level, which provides a way to alter the disease process in cancer, as well as do other things, such as drastic changes in perception. The physical world, or a particular physical object, is a collection of properties, such as color, size, shape, etc., which are products of perception formed during phylogenesis, that is, the evolution of the species, and ontogenesis, that is, conditioning during the life of a particular organism. Miraculous acts of Indian yogis in altering both their own physiology, such as living on little or no food, and properties of the physical world, such as overcoming gravity or walking through walls, as Deepak Chopra, MD, described seeing Maharishi Mahesh Yogi do in one of his books, are a matter of altering biological clocks, such as drastically slowing down breathing rate. Unquote. The contents of perception, and hence the world itself, are shown by my laboratory research with rats, which I have just described, to be a verbal matter. Another post by KLP Dubey on Bharat Raksha on August 25, 2012. Yes, sir, I am, and every single Vedic Pandit will agree with me. Nobody understands the meaning of the Rig Veda Samhita. That is why all Indian schools of philosophy, that is darshanas, have treated them as a constant while focusing on the Brahmanas and the Upanishads. There has never developed in India a school of thought engaged in the interpretation of the meanings of the Rig Vedic sounds. Such attempts were few and far between, and there was no cohesive effort. The reason is simple. It was soon realized that there were way too many inconsistencies when trying to force-fit Sanskrit meanings to Vedic words. Therefore, the focus was on preserving the Vedic sounds for future generations and to continue to develop ancillary disciplines centered around the big sounds in order to derive other benefits. Also, a mistake, though understandable, was made in restricting the maintenance of the Veda to a particular caste or group of individuals. If we have more collective responsibility for the Veda without any narrow turf battles, then such issues would never arise. End quote. That's the end of the quote from KLP Dubai. My response: restricting the maintenance of the Veda to a particular caste or group of individuals is done to avoid corruption of the Veda, because the universe itself is an entity comprised of Vedic words, and corruption of the Vedic words produces corruption of a comprehensive kind. The entire history of an individual, both evolutionary and in the life of the individual, goes into determining the meaning or effects of the words or sounds the individual produces. Caste restrictions, which are restrictions of both lineage and behavior, are necessary to preserve the meanings or effects of the words or sounds. As I have said on April 6, 2009, in my main blog, nuclear supremacy for India over US, I said, quote, behavior can change genes as genes can change behavior, unquote. And mere physical proximity can change genes, as can other kinds of proximity, such as watching the same television program or reading the same book, both of which involve people who may be widely separated in time and space as conventionally understood, engaging in common behavior. And so caste restrictions, which are restrictions of both lineage and behavior, are necessary to preserve the meanings or effects of the words or sounds. In my press release dated December 20th, 2011, titled Corruption is Due to Caste Corruption, I said, India can abolish poverty immediately and overtake the United States economically in 10 years. See my blog, A Magical Solution to Poverty. That's one word. A Magical Solution to Poverty .blogspot.com. The United States has been applying my proposal about money that is described in this blog by stealth and now also openly, although it doesn't give me credit. An obstacle to its implementation in India is the fear that it will make the lower castes, who form the bulk of India's population, prosperous, and that will lead to an increasing incidence of intercaste marriages. And since the lower castes are intellectually and morally inferior to the deterioration and death of society, a ban on intercaste marriages will take care of this fear and enable my proposal about money to be implemented. The caste corruption of society and other kinds of corruption go together. There is no need for a Lokpal, just an end to caste corruption of society. Since the bulk of India's population is low caste, democracy necessarily means rule by the intellectually and morally inferior. Hence, democracy must end. To this I am adding, because of the advanced state of caste corruption in India, a ban on intercaste marriages will not end caste corruption. Caste corruption will end with the simultaneous nuclear destruction of New Delhi, Washington, and New York, as I've described in my earlier videos. I have shown in earlier videos that, quote, India's science and technology community is devoid of any intelligence, unquote, and that, quote, India's is a population of insects, unquote. This state of affairs is a manifestation of caste corruption. I have also said that what the insect journalists and columnists, politicians, etc. say does not matter. Only what Satish Chandra says matters. To quote more fully from one of my earlier videos, India's is a population of insects, and whether a few tens of thousands or a few million are killed in the nuclear destruction of New Delhi, it will be the death of insects. India's nuclear forces have the benefit of guidance from me, and that makes all the difference. and will enable India to win over its enemy, the United States. There is nothing peculiarly Indian about this situation. As I wrote on June 15, 2010, and this press release is included in my main blog, Nuclear Supremacy for India over US. I wrote, the life of a nation includes and can be defined by the life of a leader whose psyche and genes they come to share. By cutting off the life of the Indian, who is the life and light of India, from the Indian people, putting in place long-time agents of British intelligence and the CIA, such as the Nehru family and Vajpayee instead. I'm not sure if it's pronounced Vajpayee or Vajpayee, I've forgotten. CIA RAW have ensured the decay and death of the Indian nation. The nuclear destruction of New Delhi can change the situation and bring India back to life. Note that the Nehru family and Vajpayee are products of caste corruption, whereas Satish Chandra is the king of the Aryas, as I have said. That is why, quote, what the insect journalists and columnists, politicians, etc. say does not matter. Only what Satish Chandra says matters. According to a report on August 26, 2012, in the Hindu newspaper, quote, Kalam favors FDI in retail sector. FDI is foreign direct investment. The former president, APJ Abdul Kalam, said here on Sunday that aggressive marketing and competitiveness were the only factors that separated the developed and developing world, unquote. What APJ Abdul Kalam says does not matter. Only what Satish Chandra says matters. See what I have said in one of my earlier videos about, quote, the determining role of force even in economic relations, unquote. Kalam was parroting something fed to him by CIA RAW, and what he was fed originated from Subramanian Swamy, who has worked for the CIA for 4 decades. Kalam was part of India's science and technology community, which I said is devoid of any intelligence and which failed to challenge R. Chidambaram's outrageous claim in 1998 that his computer models enable him to build higher yield nuclear weapons which need not undergo explosive tests. With such people in charge of India's defense, not even God can save India. But what Kalam says is prominently reported in the media, and there are no reports of what Satish Chandra says, because of CIA's rule over India through RAW, as a part of which India's media are also tools of CIA RAW. The simultaneous nuclear destruction of New Delhi, Washington, and New York will change this situation. On March 18, 2009, I said, this press release is in my main blog, Nuclear Supremacy for India over US. Quote, US Admiral William Fallon, who was called the sole bulwark against an American attack on Iran, unquote. When commander of the US Central Command and asked about war with Iran in an interview to Esquire magazine, which appeared in its April 2008 issue, well, Fallon said, quote, "Get serious. These guys are ants. When the time comes, you crush them," unquote. This is how the United States views India and Pakistan also. The Indians' behavior toward the Americans and toward me that I have described in my main blog, Nuclear Supremacy for India over US, shows Indians to be far more contemptible and loathsome and deserving of being crushed than just ants and insects.